I'm Trevor. This is Luke. We started Evil Genius Beer Company 3 years ago. We launched. We started 5 years ago. We actually started the process for what became Evil Genius. We started here at Villanova, and actually we used a lot of the resources and helped, and those helped create what actually we were able to put into production in 3 years ago. We're now in 5 states, and we're going to be launching Pittsburgh in about 2 weeks' time. We're going to be building our own brewery in about 9 months from now, and we got a lot of new and exciting developments happening. It's about 20 seconds, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Close enough. Do you have anything different to add? I'd love to hear what your pitch is.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Luke Bowen. I'm the other half of Evil Genius with Trevor. I guess the thing for our company is we sort of exist in this really dynamic space, which is a subset of the overall beer market, which we've all had, Bud Miller Coors, but the craft segment is actually the really interesting sort of segment of this market that's just exploding faster than we can even describe. And we sort of have a very unique position in that as a young company, only being 3 years old, we're one of the top 50 in the country in our category. And what that sort of means is for us as a trajectory, we're next. And I think that if you check back in 36 months from now, I think that we'll have a very, very different story to tell as this market keeps evolving. So really excited to be here to share our story with you guys, and hopefully maybe convert a few drinkers out there. So.
Gigi.
I'm Gigi Fergus, and I have a very unique niche. My area is both healthcare and business. I'm a nurse by training, and I've been a nurse for 20-something years, and made the crazy decision not to get an MSN, but to get an MBA. I'm somebody who had a focus towards management, process improvement, Lean Six Sigma, and really creating memorable outcomes for patients at the bedside. So what I do right now is I teach productivity to nurse managers. I come in and a lot of times I'm asked to coach and mentor nursing directors, especially if they're new in their positions. I also mentor and coach and help create new chief nursing officers. Again, it depends on what I'm being asked to do when I go there. But currently, I'm working as a chief nursing officer in West Virginia, so I flew in today. I live my life on a plane, and I enjoy what I do. It's the perfect marriage of healthcare and business consulting. So very happy to be here with you.
I'm Patrick Bralla from Score Enterprises, and I'll let John introduce himself in a minute. But at Score Enterprises, our main focus is Advita.com. Advita outfits the lifelong athlete with great activewear, athletic, and outdoor clothing, and we source that from exceptional manufacturers. But our competitive niche is really cultivating relationships with mid-tier clothing manufacturers and providing them with an opportunity to that they may not otherwise have with their closeouts and overstocks.
Well said.
That's the formal one. Yeah.
Just so I can understand my audience, can I see a quick show of hands of who loves to pay retail prices for everything?
So as you can see here, who's the sales guy here and who's the business guy?
You are not our customer. Everybody else, you're our customer.
Awesome.
My name's Mike Mayer. I'm a 2012 MBA grad from the Center City Fast Track program. Not as cool as the Evil Genius beer guys, but our workspace is pretty cool. So we house local professionals, entrepreneurs, and startups in what I call the epicenter of innovation in Philadelphia. It's about 6,000 square feet of office space, which I think is going to be the workspace of the future. By 2020, we expect about 50% of the workforce to be mobile or virtual in some capacity. And through providing office space so startups and early stage entrepreneurs can focus on building their product or service, we also incubate some of the city's best startups. So thank you to be here, and thank you too for inviting me.
Thank you, appreciate that. Quick poll in the audience. Who in the audience tonight is interested in a startup, working on a startup right now? All right, fantastic. That's good to know. All right, Luke, I want to start with you tonight. And I have prepared a couple of questions for our panelists, but the real value is we want to hear from you. So what we're going to do, anytime during the presentation tonight, I'd like you to text me your questions. You can text it to ICE, ICE, at villanova.edu. And what I'll do is a time for me to try to incorporate these questions into the panel tonight. So we'd love to hear from you. So feel free to text anything you might have a question about. Luke, first question. Evil Genius was hatched while you were an MBA candidate here at Villanova. What advice would you give to current students trying to launch their own venture?
I think that for students, I think that there are two real assets that they have, and one is being a student, and the second one is time. To talk kind of about the first one, when being a student opens up so many doors for you that you don't have once you're not a student. So when you're a student, you can call people and be like, hey, I'm Luke from Villanova. I'm really interested in what you do. Can you meet me for coffee or lunch? And it's very non-threatening because you're not really looking for a job. You know, you're not coming at them as a competitor. You're kind of just saying, hey, I'd like to learn from you. And normally those people are more senior in their careers, and everybody kind of remembers what it was like when they were a younger person, and having, you know, usually if someone's successful, they reached out to somebody more senior than them, and they gave them good advice, or they had a mentor. So usually people are very likely to pay that forward. So, you know, being a student allows you to ask also certain questions that you can't ask when you're not a student, about like the inside, the inner workings of their business, how their competitive space works, about their competitors. Stuff that you probably couldn't ask if you weren't a student or working for a competitor or working within that space. So it gives you an entry into a world that you won't have when you're not a student necessarily. And I think that that's really important. And the second is the time. Like I could probably speak for everybody up here when I say time is our most valuable asset. Our time is worth money. And so when now we have to be very, very careful about how we allocate the finite amount of resources that we have during the day. When you're a student, you have so much time, and time to, like, you know, play Madden or whatever, right? Like, so the difference is, you know, everybody should, I think the way that we looked at it, both Trevor and I, is everybody should look at their time in a way that if you're not doing anything to move yourself forward or generate money, you're wasting time. So it's up to the individual to break down their hours of the day to try to figure out what sort of activities that they should pursue that'll either forward their academic pursuits, their career pursuits, or in this case, starting a company. So if you have all of that time now, which is an asset that I 100% guarantee you won't have later, it's really up to you to figure out how you're going to deploy your resources and take advantage of the time that you have. So,
Thank you.
I'm a CPA and,
Okay.
right?
Now you're in athletic apparel. Why did you choose to enter that, you know, that particular space as an entrepreneur?
Well, actually, that was the question for John.
But that's okay, you can answer it.
Yeah, so, for me, right, so a couple months ago, I left the space that I was in. I was, you know, I'd spent 25 years as a finance professional, financing big real estate projects, and had left where I was, and during that time said, hey, I wanted to kind of look at some other stuff. I was doing a lot of networking, and I actually ran into John, who was an old friend, and we were was helping him look at buying a particular business that John had some expertise in, and so for me, it was an opportunity to bolt on to a good business concept, and provide, you know, some of my expertise onto John's expertise. Why athletic apparel in general? As we went down the road and we actually started out, it's interesting to say, we actually started out as much more general merchandisers, and I'm sure probably tonight at some point we'll get into that, so strategy changes. But we had actually focused until we decided we found the niche, that this was a market that had lots of legs. There's the athleisure trends going on right now. What's the athletic market?
It's about a $30 billion market.
It's a $30 billion
Athletic
market.
apparel.
You know, we just want a small piece of it.
1%. 99 for everybody else, 1 for us.
Yeah, but not only that, but who we were and our lifestyles and so on kind of made us, you know, more knowledgeable about that particular, you know, market.
Now, Gigi, you got your BS in nursing, and so you've kind of been able to use that up to the present time. So, I mean, memorable care is a combination of all these
Right.
these academic pursuits that you you've encountered in your life. How has the EMBA Villanova kind of assisted you with that process?
So kind of to build off of Luke's comments as well, when I was in the EMBA program, I actually put together a full presentation and I invited all of the nursing deans. I did not get my nursing degree from Villanova, but I invited all these nursing deans, and I thought, well, surely there'll be, sisters in arms, and, this will be great. And they pretty much ate me alive. But it's okay, because it was a safe environment. And the time element is crucial, but the bigger piece of that, now, in the EMBA program, when I was in the EMBA program, I was working for Kaiser Permanente as a consultant in San Francisco, and I flew every other weekend from San Francisco to Philly. Opposite weekends, I flew San Francisco to Wichita, where I lived, and then on special weekends, I did the multi-city. So did that for 2 years. So I find entrepreneurs take away excuses. You get it done. And sometimes that means that you give up your Madden time.
Did you give yours up?
I did. I had no Madden time, so I had to give up shopping time, okay? If you knew where I'm at right now.
You could do that online.
Let me tell you. This is true. I love this, okay? I'm in so much trouble with my husband right now because I'm working in West Virginia, and there's no shopping where I'm at. Literally, the nearest Starbucks is 54 miles away. So I get home the other day, and there's all these boxes on the bed in the guest room. My husband's like, "You're cut off." I'm like, "Wait a minute, I'm working hard here." So nonetheless, that safe environment as a student, and being in front of them and getting the feedback and having I had very select people from the EMBA program sitting in on that conversation. So I had full representation of business and of nursing and healthcare. The healthcare people ate me up. The business people loved it to death, but I learned and I put some things together. This is, Memorable Care is actually my third business to own. My first business, I grew up in a household where my parents owned their own business, and my sister and I are still, I think, on record as the youngest card-carrying members of the World Trade Center. I got my card when I was 15. And she got hers when she was 14. But we've grown up in an entrepreneurial family and one that pushed education. So when I started looking for programs, I have 3 bachelor's degrees, so I'm overeducated to start with. So why would you go get an MSN? I'm somebody who values the MBA. And so I knew that if location is moot, go to the best program you can possibly go to, regardless of cost. And for me, that was Villanova. So I feel like I have increased my ROI, at least tripled it from when I started the program to what I'm making now. So different from these gentlemen, I'll just add this, different from these gentlemen, they're selling a product, I'm selling me. I have to sell leadership, change management, how to create a culture change in very difficult, distressed facilities. So a little bit different take, but very engaged with both the business side and the nursing side.
Great, thank you. Michael, Benjamin's desk has invested heavily in the Philadelphia entrepreneurial ecosystem by hosting these events and programs like the Startup Grind. How has that strategy paid off for you?
So just as background, Startup Grind is a global meetup. Raise your hand if you've ever seen or used meetup.com. Yeah, so Meetup is just it's a technology website where you can find what's interesting to you and potentially meet other people that are doing similar stuff via physical events, but it's all through the Meetup platform. Startup Grind is sponsored by Google for Entrepreneurs, and they've hand-selected, born out of Silicon Valley, and an idea that a guy had after doing a really, really good interview with a serial entrepreneur. He had the idea of what if every city and ecosystem had something like this, where some of the best entrepreneurs in a region could come and share their experiences and their thoughts with other entrepreneurs that are trying to, learn and achieve those type of growth for their startups and just to get feedback. So I'm the Philadelphia chapter director, and it's an honor to be so. But on a monthly basis, I get a chance to interview some of the best entrepreneurs in the region, and it's via a fireside chat. So why would I do it? Number one, so it's kind of, you say I give back to the ecosystem, but I run a co-working space where events and programming is very important to the model, right? So we use events as our marketing budget. The more impressions we get on a monthly basis through the space to see what it's all about, because it's a relatively new industry, that's a really, really efficient way to give back, but also to have impressions for showing off our space. I've had the opportunity to interview some of the best entrepreneurs and venture capitalists in the world. Ned Moore, he's sold several companies. A guy named Mike Harris has sold several companies. Gabe Weinberg, who was here not too long ago, he operates one of the top 10 search engines in the world called DuckDuckGo. He just released his book called Traction. Gabe was my second interview. Next month, I get a chance to interview Josh Koppelman. He's the founder of First Round Capital, which is one of the best early stage venture capital firms in the world. He sold Half.com, I believe, for several $100 million to eBay. And the list goes on and on. So not only is it a huge advantage for me personally to get a chance to rub shoulders with these guys, ask them questions that are on my mind, but it's also an opportunity for both my community at Benjamin's Desk and the broader Philadelphia startup ecosystem to be able to, hang out with these entrepreneurs and ask them what's on their mind, and then hopefully also meet and have some meaningful introductions there, potentially find a co-founder, potentially find partners, potentially find customers through these events at spaces like mine. So as much as we feel like we've been given back, we are a for-profit business, and the goal obviously is to maximize how many people are members at our space. We currently have over 105 companies across about 160 members just in the Philadelphia region that call Benjamin's Desk home. And the aspirations are to grow this network of spaces to about 5 or 10 boutique spaces in the region, and then to see what happens next.
When you say in the region, does that include suburbs?
Yeah, so suburbs is interesting to us. We know of at least a dozen people that on the weekends will co-work from the Wegmans in King of Prussia. There's a hotbed of young entrepreneurs that are in the suburbs, and frankly, the Philadelphia tax climate is not that good, and as such, people like to locate outside of the Philadelphia county line. So we think the suburbs is interesting, and not to mention the real early stage community that was built up here back in the time that we were talking, even in the 90s and early 2000s, was all relatively born in the suburbs in this corridor extending all the way through the main line and 202. So we like the suburbs. It's just a matter of finding the right space, the right market. It's not too different from a real estate play. Location, density, proximity, all those things matter. So we're on the hunt. If you know of a good space, feel free to email me.
John, tell me a little bit about success in the company. How do you measure that, both short-term and long-term as well?
Well, it's a $30 billion industry, and 1% is pretty successful. It's success, as you know, is defined in many, many different ways. But the way we're looking at it is, with our backgrounds, we want to develop a company that is going to satisfy a need, have happy employees that are willing to go the extra mile for you, and so you have to take care of them, and create a brand. So in this massive industry that we chose to be in, we're not the only ones who thought it's a good spot to build a brand. There are many others. So we got to figure in the short term, because that's our long-term goal, is okay, how are we going to, we know we want to be there, how do we do it is the short term. So the short term is blocking and tackling. It's taking our egos and throwing them out the door and doing all the work that needs to be done. As Gigi said, there's no time for anything else. But the short-term goal and the short-term outlook for us or the short-term program for us, is to do the blocking and tackling, to create our brand, to find our niche, to find our customer, to get to our customer and have them have a great experience. And from that experience, they're going to tell people. We're then going to become ambassadors to the industry by learning more and more things about our industry and going to forums and becoming leaders. And the term that we use is building a campfire. And once we build that campfire, once we get our campfire going, we're going to start adding wood to it until it's ablaze. And then we can take that fire and build another one nearby, an extension of what we're doing, maybe get into fashion, maybe get into equipment, maybe get into a whole different extension of the business we're in. But that's all long term. Short term, it's getting done whatever it needs to get done.
Can I add one thing to that? So, these guys talk about big markets and the benefit of grabbing a fraction of a big market. I'm friendly with a guy named Seth Berger, who was the founder of N1. And when you hear business plans, I see a lot of startup models and business plans that come across my desk. And Seth sold out to have a niche in the basketball apparel market. His market was 12 to 18-year-old boys that play basketball. Talk about a niche market, but they grew that thing to several $100 million in revenues before selling it. So it just goes to show you, if you can tackle a niche marketplace that's big enough, there's a massive opportunity there.
That's probably why I have so much business in healthcare. I always go to the worst facilities in America. So there are quite a few. So,
And everybody drinks beer.
Well, that brings me to the next question, actually. This morning I was actually listening to a segment on the craft whiskey market, how that's just exploding right now. Tell us about the craft beer market. I mean, there seems to be more and more entrants every day. You hear about it. How do you keep yourself differentiated? And what are your views on at what point does this market become saturated?
So it's a really interesting market in the sense that last year it grew by 18% in volume and 20% in dollars. And it's had double-digit growth for almost 10 years. I think it was maybe 1 year where it was 9% growth. And that was even throughout the major recession we went through as well. So and Luke always points this out, is that craft beer is it's a luxury that is relatively inexpensive. Like if you have to cut back, you maybe don't go on your vacation to Bermuda, but buying that 6-pack of beer every once in a while isn't really breaking the bank for you. So people are less willing to give up those small luxuries than they are the big ones. And I think that's one of the big things that's helped us. But I think one of the reasons why our market is growing so fast overall, and I think last year was, what, a $16 billion industry?
Almost 15.
Almost
It'll be
15.
18 next year, in a year and a half.
And that's just the craft beer market. That doesn't count the overall beer market. And last year it represented just under 7% of the overall beer market. So you can do the math on that. But what I think is actually interesting is that the craft market kind of evolved during the mid-90s. And those people who started drinking that type of beer then, they don't tend to switch back. So those people, if they were in their early 20s then, will be in their mid-40s now. And so every year we actually gain a whole year's worth of customers. Whereas for our big competitors, the Bud, Miller, Coors of the world, their customers are dying on one end and they're not replacing them with younger consumers. So really that's why I see our market growing so fast. And you know, it's an interesting way to look at it, but it's actually the truth.
Good, thank you. I am getting an outstanding response from the audience as far as questions, so I'm going to try to hammer through as many as we can. So thank you very much for being so involved tonight. Gigi, let's go with you. How do you see mobile technology impacting the roles of the Chief Nursing Officer?
So it's interesting you should mention that. I've been at this facility. I'm an interim Chief Nursing Officer in Greenbrier, West Virginia. I've been there since June 6th. We went live with CPOE, Physician Order Entry, as of August 29th. I won't say it was a raging success. I won't tell you it was a terrible failure. What I will tell you is that we only had one CPU found in a physician toilet. We only had one CPU found out in the parking lot. So I work in an industry, you're supposed to laugh at that, they took the whole computer and dumped it in the toilet, okay? So I can't make things like that up, okay? So I work in an industry where healthcare has been fairly stodgy in its approach for so long. And the federal government has emphasized, pushed, mandated that we must not only utilize technology, but we must embrace it. So the first step of that is the electronic medical record and going down the path of, then the physicians put their own orders in. It's a huge debacle, I'll tell you this. And on the back side of it, counterintuitively, the government has offered monies for meaningful use too. If you meet all of these guidelines, then we're going to give you big monies back to offset the cost of implementing those big EMRs. So the question was around mobile technologies. It's very interesting. I was in a conversation just 2 days ago with a company that has a product that will allow us to take a picture of a wound and have that loaded into the electronic medical record. Now you're going, well, what's so big about that? Well, can you believe it? The big 5 companies that do EHRs, nobody has that technology. So right now we're stuck between that electronic and that paper world where you still have a paper chart, but you have to access both. So you take a picture, how do you get that picture uploaded? So that mobile piece, this is just one little one little foot into that puddle where there are giant ramifications from that, where physicians would be able to take a picture of an endoscopy and have that mobily loaded into the EHR. The other thing is you're seeing docs carrying around iPads now and doing drop-down lists to order medications and such and get their med list. So whether we like it or not, mobile technology is now budding up into healthcare. Obviously, it's the wave of the future. Just, I wouldn't expect anything from healthcare for probably another 10 to 15 years.
You know, last year I was at the PAC conference, it was about this time last year, and clearly, I mean, half of the presenters all were making presentations on their version of how to solve the medical record stuff.
Right.
And it was so fragmented, it was astonishing.
It is.
Yeah.
You would think, and so each company, each hospital chain thinks that they can kind of build their own, they can fix it. But it's so interdependent. The actual end user is so frustrated that it takes, what used to take 20 to 30 minutes to admit a patient now takes an hour and a half. So if you're a physician and you bill by the hour or by the patient and it now takes you 3 times as long to see it, how thrilled are you about that system? Probably not very happy.
So does that require culture change?
Oh, it's a huge culture change. I mean,
Okay.
I'm just trying to keep them from throwing the CPO. They were beat the whole week we went live. They just beat a path right to my office.
We have an audience member who wants to know, what's that first step? What's that first step towards creating a change in culture?
Creating a culture change. Well, the first thing is you have to be painfully transparent in everything you do. You have to go out. You have to have integrity. You do what you say you're going to do. I'm there. I work 60, 70 hours a week. I told the directors, the week you work more hours than I do is the week I'll cut you some slack. Until then, I don't want to hear it. Okay, there's work to be done. We don't deal in commodity. We deal in people's lives. If we screw up, someone dies. Take, for example, Texas Presbyterian. Okay, if that doesn't scare you, it should. I'll tell you, and I'm surprised nobody asked about Ebola yet, but yes, my hospital has a plan. We had that meeting yesterday. But the reality is there was no plan as of about a week and a half ago. So the chances of healthcare workers being infected is huge. You know, how do you create a culture change? Well, you have to go in and you have to be genuine. What I usually do is I have one-on-one meetings to reset accountability. Typically, I go to facilities where there's been no accountability. The managers and directors, it's the Susie the pie maker issue. It's, if you've read the E-Myth, Susie's a good pie maker. She makes great pies. She makes such great pies, people want to buy her pies. So she decides she's going to open a business to sell Susie's pies. So Susie opens the pie business. She starts making pies for people and realizes she has overhead, she has employees, she has all these costs. She starts scrimping back on the pie making essentials. And so as she does this, the quality of her product goes down. And what happens to her clientele? They start leaving. So within 15 months at the most, Susie the pie maker has to shut the pie maker's shop because Susie is a pie maker. She's not a business owner. It's the same exact problem in healthcare. You're a good nurse, you become a good nurse manager or a good charge nurse. The assumption is you'll be a good nurse manager, you be a good nurse director. You might get a little bit of training and be a chief nursing officer. The reality is you don't get squat. You usually get the keys. There you go. Okay. We do not teach each other in healthcare. And so I teach business entrepreneurship in hospitals. And it starts with accountability. It starts with being transparent. It starts with doing what you say you're going to do.
John, a lot of people associate an entrepreneur with having that novel idea, that something that, why didn't I think of that first? You know, what difficulties have you faced in determining like your place in existing market?
Well, it's an existing market, right? There's no glitz, there's no magic, there's no, oh my gosh, we are going to turn retailing on its ear. Retailing's been around for tens of thousands of years, and we're doing the exact same thing. We're trying to buy a good product at a great price and sell it at a value that will attract a lot of customers. So what's exciting about that is that we like what we're doing. We see the end game. We see the goals that we have as a partnership and as a company, and it's cool. So, you know, there's not a lot you can say about it. If I wish we had some secret sauce that, other than the niche that we're going after, that could really, you know, be the next Amazon or be the next thing. But we're perfectly happy doing something that's been done for so long, so well. Barriers to entry are low. When we go to investors and explain what we're doing, they get it. We're in a market of an affluent customer or an affluent consumer, so it's okay.
It's a simple business model. I mean, just trying to do it really well.
There seems to be a lot of interest in what we call balance when starting a venture.
What balance?
What balance?
There's
no balance.
Still balance.
Are you kidding?
I've looked into a couple of areas
Kidding me?
here, and we can all talk about this. First thing, when did you start paying yourself? At what point does it become critical to work on versus work in your business? And then at what point did you feel financially and professionally secure enough to operate full-time and break away from maybe a secure full-time job? If you could just do that. I think what's occurred when I started with nothing, I still have most of it.
Yep.
And then how do you balance the day-to-day and still work on the scalability of your company? So I just threw a lot at you. So
There's no such thing as balance. If you think there is, you're a fool. In order to do great things, you have to make great sacrifices. If you're not willing to do that, you're dead. Because your competitors will outwork you. They just will. They're all smarter than you. They went to better schools and they have more money. That's just the reality. So if you're not willing to do that and literally sacrifice everything, I mean everything. You know, it doesn't matter what you like weekends. You know, you like family vacations. You like boyfriends or girlfriends or wives or whatever. Husbands? No, it's just not. No,
If you don't like them, great.
no, yeah, no, but honestly, here's the part, right? This is what it's really like to start a company. Okay, what it's really like to start a company is you literally have one singular focus, and your singular focus is about what you're trying to create, and anything that takes your focus off of that is an unnecessary distraction. It needs to be eliminated. And the only way that you're like talk to anybody. Like I don't know, man. I'm very lucky now to sort of be in a position where like I get to meet a lot of people who do what I do and are more successful than me. And I just asked them like, how did you do it? And they're like, literally, I blocked it all out, and I was myopic on my focus, and I had a singular pursuit. And that's how you make $1 billion. Like, there's no billionaire that like has like an art collection or like, you know, like going on vacation. Like it. If you want to be great, you have to make great sacrifices. And I think that that's the thing that most people are unwilling to do as business owners. They think that, oh, this is below me, or I'm not willing to do this, or I'm not willing to go this extra mile. And the fact is, like, you have to have literally no pride, no ego, and everything else that gets between you and where you need to go as a distraction needs to go away. And if you're not willing to do that, you won't make it.
One of my dear friends, Jose Palomino, who's an EMBA grad, he graduated with me in 2008. He once told me, he's a serial entrepreneur also, he has valueprop.com is my plug for him. He's a great marketing guy. And Jose once told me, you're not really an entrepreneur unless your house is on the line. He says, until your house is on the line, you're just playing. And I said, do I really have to put my house on the line? And the point is yeah, you do. Because what's your pain threshold? What's the limit?
Yeah.
You know, I've made money, I've lost money. I've opened businesses, I've sold businesses, I've closed businesses. And you have to understand what your threshold is. At what point do you say, uncle? And what I find for most entrepreneurs is that threshold, starts getting higher and higher and higher. You're like, well, maybe just a little bit more, maybe just a little bit. For me, it was a loss of 100,000. Lose 100,000. Yeah, I got to go back to the day job. So I went back to consulting. You know, we'll take another shot again when I build a little piggy bank up again. If my kids don't quit tapping that money tree, but well, I've got 3 in college, 1 sitting in the corner back there, and 1 out of college. So 3 in college right now. So you know, you got to prioritize. But I'm still out there. I'm still helping hospitals, and still going to keep what I'm doing. I still have a plan to take this a further step. But You have to figure out what your threshold is.
Yeah, how much anxiety? Like you
Yeah.
literally live like from the second you wake up to the second you go to sleep, you're nervous.
Yeah.
And like, really, and
Yeah.
like if you can't perform with a gun to your head, this isn't for you.
Yeah.
Honestly,
And
it's
I have to
not-
work with him.
You're
You got
lucky.
sleep? You get sleep?
No, God no.
Neither do
Oh
I.
yeah, you like sleep?
Yeah, forget it.
Patrick and John, you got 99 fires going, and then you also have to develop the business. I mean,
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what they said, but we're different. It's different for us. I mean, John and I started this, much different time in our career. I mean, we already had a 25, 30-year-old career. Now we're jumping into this. I've got 2 kids. He's got 2 kids, right? Families. We've got a little bit of capital to bring in with us. But yeah, we're not paying ourselves right now. But at the same time, we have to figure out how to do it smarter because I can't neglect my kids. Sorry, but I can't neglect my kids. And my wife. And I have, I've already developed a lifestyle, which is oftentimes hard to escape. So, I look at it different. It's how do I do it smarter, right? How do I leverage, right, the people around us? We have extensive network. We have people coming through our office, our friends, all the time, who are a lot smarter than us and are helping us we're tapping them in. We're having them come in for lunch, right? Bringing them in to ask them what they think about what we're doing. People introducing us to others. That's how we're leveraging our time and our space. I mean, my wife, who also works full time, right? She's a Wharton MBA, and she's like our chief marketing officer. And you know what I'm saying? So we really approach it a little different. And I admire what you're saying, but we don't have that luxury because we've got a lot of other things going on that we have to balance. So there is a balance for us. Some of the other things too is where John, I partnered with the right guy, okay? Because John has skill sets that I don't have, right? And I have skill sets that he doesn't have, and we try not to cross the beams because if we do, right, then like you said, we're wasting our time. So I mean, so that's a little different for us.
But in addition to all of that, if you like what you're doing, and I was in a career for 20, 30 years that was a great career. I was in commercial real estate development, great business. I was an employee. I didn't work for myself. But I took that work home with me. I worked on weekends. If you're into something and you like it, you're going to do it. So why not do it for yourself? That's really what the decision was. And you do figure out how to make your kids' games. You figure out how to be at the family functions and how to give each and every one of your special people the amount of love that they deserve and need. So you can pull it off. It isn't easy, but you can pull it off.
By the way, my kids come in and sweep the warehouse.
Cheap labor.
Mine want $10 an hour for it.
No, but it's It's an advantage because I bring them in to sweep the warehouse. Why? Because I'm teaching them life lessons, right? And they come in and we talk about at the dinner table what we're doing. So again, it's a different place to be. We look at it a different way.
anybody in Kansas City works there?
They win? By how many runs? Not like I'm counting.
I don't know. I just got no.
Okay.
The world's got sweat. Being a Maryland guy,
I don't like gambling or anything. Oh, dude, that's the thing. I mean, you gamble with everything else, you might as well,
Evil genius guys. I want to talk a little bit, kind of some technical stuff.
Sure.
Before you decided to go build a facility, an actual brick and mortar facility, I mean, did you explore the possibilities of a contract brewing operation? What were some of the major factors that you said, all right, we're going to build?
So we don't have a facility right now.
Okay.
So what happened was that when we decided that this was the type of business that we wanted to be in, the craft beer industry, we looked at how we would go about building a facility. And we were in the MBA program at the time, and so we had a bunch of classes on finance and all the different parts that you would use to run a business. And so we used those classes very extensively to run models, both financial and other. And what we realized was that in building a facility, you have your fixed costs up here, and when you start, your sales are way down here. And while we could go and try and raise the money to accommodate for the fact that we're going to lose a lot of money for quite some time, we decided that wasn't the best course of action at the time. Like thinking back on or to give you the frame of reference for the time period, this is 2009, 2010. You know, the financial markets were still in pretty much disarray. Like, it wasn't a really an option for us to raise money both from a debt or equity position. And we realized that, you know, someone's not going to give us a couple $1 million to build a facility when we haven't even brewed a batch of beer yet. So we decided to go down what we call the contracting model, or co-packing. It's pretty prevalent in a lot of different industries.
Tim Adams started doing that. You know, that's how.
And so what we actually do is we use another facility to brew our beer. It's our recipes, our ingredients, but they physically do the labor. And the idea is, and has been, and we're getting to the point where we'll meet that fixed cost issue, is that we supply them with all of what I just mentioned, and they give us the product, and we distribute that out to our wholesaler network. And we've been able to build our business around that way. And so we were able to find a facility. We use a place up in just north of Hartford, Connecticut, and they make all our product for us. And we're on our way to, we're looking at site selection right now. Hope to have something announced by the end of the year, with the plan to have a facility open probably by this time next year, where we'll actually make a lot of our product in-house. And we're probably going to continue using the co-pack model. It's been very successful for a lot of breweries. Brooklyn Brewery still uses it, and there's a number of breweries that you wouldn't quite realize their beer actually comes from somewhere else. So if you drink Brooklyn beer, it's unlikely that it actually comes out of Brooklyn. It comes out of upstate New York. And that's just how a lot of products are sold. I mean, it's the same with Coca-Cola. You name the product, you'll probably find they use, for excess capacity, they use some other model as well.
Yeah, I think also too, like when you start a company, like there's a capital constraint that you have. I mean, most of our competitors, you know, I started this, we launched when I was in my 20s. Like, most of our competitors had been working in their careers for longer than I'd been alive when I started my first company. So, you know, I think that there's a difference there in sort of where you are in your career and how that translates into resources. So we had to figure out how we were going to make the most money the fastest. And this was the best way to do it. Like, we started this company with, you know, tens of thousands of dollars, and have turn that into millions and millions of dollars in 36 months. So it's like, you have, as an entrepreneur, you have to figure out where you deploy your human resources and your monetary resources in the way that you can get your multiples the fastest. And I think that in our space, given the climate, we were just not there, and we didn't have the experience. Like, neither Trevor nor I had run a beer company before, right? Like, yeah, in like our fantasies or whatever, but like not like in real life. And I think that the trick was, there's a such thing as growing too quickly and getting over your head. And I think for a lot of people who've never run companies, myself being one of them before this, I didn't have the knowledge to effectively run a business. Like, there's so much that goes into running a company that you can't learn in business school. It's just sort of like, you know, setting up that distribution network. How do you manage, you know, your customers? How do you deal with retailers? How do you deal with people who are problems, like real problems? And when those real problems actually affect whether or not you get checks at the end of the month. So it becomes complicated too, but I think that at least with us, and sort of how we view it, and how we view, you know, the challenges for starting our business, is that, you know, you figure out where you can not cut corners, but your fastest way between 2 points is a straight line. And I think that a lot of people, you know, don't necessarily take the most direct route, which sometimes could be the simplest. And, you know, thinking creatively, taking a look at your comps and seeing what they're not doing, and then making those adjustments can be really helpful.
Patrick talked a little bit, I believe Patrick talked about working smart, right? What's a typical workflow rhythm for you in a situation like that?
Give me an example. I'm just trying to.
Well, Luke was just talking about having, you know, there's those things that you're trying to pick up that, you know, you're not found in a business school textbook.
Yeah. So here's an interesting one. So we're you know, neither of us you know know anything about, like, you know, SEO marketing or pay per click, but that is integral to our business, right? It is, the whole business is founded on that. So what do? We go out, we leverage our friends, figure out, like, you know, they bring resources to us, and then at the end of the day, interesting thing we did is we went out and we're sharing an employee with a marketing firm, because, you know, we don't need a full-time employee right now in that particular space. They're getting half of that person for the week. We're getting half of that person for the week. Really creative. We have to be really creative, you know what I'm saying, in the way we use our capital. There's probably other things.
I mean, processing.
Yeah.
We know how companies take their product, their inventory, how they accept it, and then the process they go through to get it back out to the consumer. And that is something that's been taken for granted. But if you look at it from someone who's never seen it before, you question everything. And you can come up with a new process that is more efficient, less expensive, and actually takes up less space. So our real estate overhead can be lower. So it's every aspect of the business can be looked at from some unique way.
The other thing is sourcing product is so critical to what we do. But you would think that if you have the money, okay, and you're the customer to buy product, it would be easy, right, to go out there and do it. Well, it has become our biggest challenge in buying product because one is we found that the relationship building is critical to buying closeouts and overstocks, right? And you have to build credibility and trust. So the gestation period to develop that relationship and get the product and buy the product to get and negotiate and get on the shelf has been incredible. So we've just had to be creative. We have to be really creative about how we approach every supplier. That was a big wake-up call for us.
Luckily, you're working in the startup space. What do you see? Have you seen any trends in the startup world, in the VC world at all?
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of interesting thoughts that you're hearing from the other panelists, and I always try to look for comps to what people are talking about and how that relates to different industries or different things that I'm seeing. Our model by design is to cater to a workforce of entrepreneurs and mobile professionals that realize that you don't need the existing overhead structure that so many businesses and corporations are used to. But that's just an example of physical space and how people are shedding physical space. And corporations as a whole, Luke Pearl, who's a classmate of mine, were just talking before this seminar around how corporations that typically lease space, you're talking big companies like a Comcast, for example, and how the accounting principles are going to change as such, where it's going to be more beneficial for them to own their asset than it is for them to continue to rent. And that's coming in 2015. And that's like a monumental change. It changes the dynamics of how retailers think about where they should locate and how much money they want to invest into a physical asset. I can say that the startup space, and for those of you that don't know what a startup is or how you would define one, I would define it as a company that needs to achieve rapid growth, and in order to achieve rapid growth, they need a significant amount of capital to achieve that goal. And typically what comes to mind is venture capital and private equity, depending on the business model. So a company like Uber, for example, if you've heard of Uber or used Uber, their Philly team launched out of our space. So although it wasn't their headquarters, which was based in San Francisco, I got an opportunity to look at one of the most interesting and fastest growing startups in the world and to see some of the challenges that they face. I can say one big trend is on demand. So anything that you can achieve with on demand, they're disrupting the transportation industry, which is just a massive industry, highly regulated. When you use words like that, right, big industry, highly regulated, customer experience sucks, they're the type of words that really get people excited about a business model when you can figure out an innovation or sometimes just an iteration of an existing model that can bring a new product or service to market. I see trends on such a daily basis. It's quite fascinating to see what's happening across a variety of industries. You mentioned the health IT space, maybe one of the biggest growth markets for startups right now. We have an accelerator in the region called Dream Adventures, which is founded by a few Philadelphia-based entrepreneurs. They're headquartered here. They have what's called the Dream Health program. They take a piece of equity in your company, provide you with a little bit of cash, and you go spend 12 weeks with a cohort with the hopes to achieve a significant milestone, pitch to some investors, raise some money, and go bring your product to market. But one of these Philadelphia companies with two non-Philadelphia transplants ended up in Philly, entered this accelerator program. The company's called BioMeme, and they're doing some interesting stuff with cell phones where they can look at blood tests, and rather than waiting 72 hours, they can do it in 30 minutes. Things that are actually changing the world. Mark Cuban, for example, is an investor in this company. So, you know, there's 100 trends to hit on, but that's part of my job is I get to see them on a daily basis. Just to add a few things to the previous questions, you can tell by the panel that if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you better be passionate about what you're doing. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the space in which you're exploring, but you have to be passionate about what you're doing. You're not going to be successful. I took a much different path than a normal entrepreneur. I was, you know, active duty military, was going to grad school, and I was launching my business all simultaneously. And within the first 2 years, got married, had 2 kids, and your time is a resource, and it becomes very difficult to stay laser focused on what you're doing. But I would say that, like these guys, if you manage your time effectively, you think outside the box, surround yourself with smart people, you can do multiple things at a given time. I'm a big fan of doing several things at once, as long as whether you're doing something for profit, for not profit, for good, sitting on boards, you need to look at whatever you're doing as concentric circles. Those circles need to overlap, and you'll find that there's good value in actually taking that approach. But for the students that are in the room, like the Evil Genius guys, I similarly took every single class as a incubation period to look at my idea, craft my idea. If there's any professor at Villanova who says, here's the topic, build a business plan, build a financial model, and you say, hey, listen, this doesn't really meet the requirements, but this is what I'm doing, and I'm really passionate about it, and I think there's some synergies between what I'm doing and your you know, your instructions on how to do this project. Would it be okay if I did this? 150%, they're going to not only support it, but they're going to also help you too. I can't tell you how many professors gave me some fantastic advice along the way. So that's just a quick plug. I think undergraduate as well as graduate school is the best incubator in the world if you have a business idea in mind and you want to bring something to market when you get out. I spoke at Wharton not too long ago, and I told all the students there, I said, listen, and you know, here's guys that have families on this side of the table, and Gigi as well. The best thing about being a student is you probably aren't married, you probably don't have any kids, you probably don't have a mortgage. That's the best time in the world to start a company because the risk isn't there. I was telling Luke about my new venture. I'm launching a new venture in the real estate space, and I'm selling my house to test the model. So the house that I live in, I convinced my wife we're going to sell our home to see if this works. And you know, when you say you got to put the house on the line, we're putting the house on the line. But it's worth it because you're passionate about it. So that's my quick catch up there.
That's awesome, man.
That's
That's awesome.
And my wife's an attorney at Pepper House. She makes a ton of money, so I don't take compensation yet. So I don't have a W-2, so I define myself as an entrepreneur because I don't take a paycheck. But you know, sometimes it takes a little bit to get off the ground to the point where you can take comp. Most investors will ask you, are you taking compensation? And sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes they will look at that as a negative because they want to see your resolve, your grit, your resilience. What are you really invested in? If you aren't invested in this company, either by not taking comp or putting your own capital in the game, why in the world would I give you my capital? Especially in 2014 when it doesn't cost that much money or time to bring a product or service to market. So just something to think about.
We've seen actually the opposite too as we've gone through the venture capital. We're about to close an A round, and like the people that we've met with, because like, you know, we're MBAs, we take below market comp because my value is in the business, not in my cash flow. So it's like, they're like, well, why are you taking so little? I don't want you to worry about, you know, where you're, you know, how you're going to pay your credit card at the end of the month. It's which actually I found a disconnect. I actually agree more with you, is that like showing that, you know, you're willing to make sacrifices is more indicative of your commitment. It was just really interesting on the large scale VC side to see people be like, well, why aren't you taking 150,000 salary? It's like, it's a waste of money. Like I can make more money leaving that in the company. You know what I mean?
The good VCs will use a data approach. So Josh Kaufman from First Round Capital, he doesn't say that he has a portfolio, he says he has a community. And what his community does, a portfolio of companies, is they share best practices. So they look at all the founders in different industries. What are they taking in comp? What should you hire, you know, a Ruby on Rails developer? What should a good director of sales make? So a lot of these VCs have a lot of data, and they're able to say from data, no, you should be making this much comp because this is what successful companies that we've seen have done, and we think you should emulate them because it's a best practice thing. So I think that's spot on too.
Yeah.